Hello, hello. How are we doing? Okay, so we are now recording, and yeah, we'll just keep
Wonderful.
mics muted unless they have a question. Okay, thank you, Venerable Amy.
Fantastic. Wonderful. I want to thank all of you for joining. And yeah, great, we got it. Thank you very much. It is an interesting time, as we discussed yesterday. Not a problem if you weren't here yesterday. Some of what we may talk about may be similar, and we're also going to do some different, more self-compassion meditations and things like that. So I'm really happy to be here with all of you, and I'm glad you made the time right now. This is the best thing you can do. I just wanted to say, we are under, in a sense, one of my friends called it house arrest. And this is a time people can do a lot more practice if that's possible for you. Some of you may be working from home. Some of you, unfortunately, may have been laid off and struggling. So if you do find you've got more time right now, certainly rather than immediately launching into the habit of streaming Netflix and YouTube videos, see if you can start to introduce a new habit where you're actually getting to some of these practices a bit more quickly. So, and that starts to be part of your day. You won't believe how much it supports you during this time. So fantastic, like that. So just something to think about. Okay, let me just looking at all the participants because we have 2 pages today. So that's fantastic. Okay, I hope everybody got in that wanted to. Wonderful. Okay, what I'd like to do is I'm going to start with a motivation that I read yesterday. The reason I'm doing this is we have a teacher connected, obviously, with our centers, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And the wonderful thing about having a teacher like that, it's like the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is similar, is that he's been requesting us and suggesting, here's some things you can do if you're home and you can't go to work and you don't know what to do. Now, some of these practices, Rinpoche suggested, they are freely downloadable, and we can help you to figure that out later, how you do that if you want to do it. Some of them are difficult for people. They're challenging with the mantras, but Rinpoche's recorded a 1-hour teaching he just gave a few days ago, giving us the kind of oral transmission of these mantras. And what that means is it makes it stronger for you when you actually do the practice. It's more powerful. And it actually connects you in a sense to Rinpoche, who right now is at Kopan Monastery in Nepal. So what I want to do is, one of the practices Rinpoche suggested is something easily accessible to you, because it's, it's something Rinpoche suggested we do every day in the morning for our practice. And it's called a method to transform a suffering life into happiness. Several of you are already doing this practice. That's fantastic. It never hurts to do it again. And part of our doing it is it kind of connects us to Rinpoche, honors that, but it's a scanning. The beginning is a scanning motivation and a scanning meditation of the Lam Rim. And the Lam Rim, as many of you know, is our underlying philosophy. So I just want to read the first part again. I want you to just close your eyes and reflect. And what's neat about it is a lot of you are home and people are stressed and anxious. Some people are not used to being at home all day long. And it's interesting to start reflecting on your life of how often you just go out for some small errand and how that's a bit of a pick-me-up for the day, but it's also a distraction. And we have all these distractions and kind of do these things throughout the day, and it takes us away from more serious practice. So now we've been forced, in a sense, to be home. Now, some people who are home alone, and I'm certainly happy to address this later, and there will be time for questions and answers, is when you're home alone, some people get lonely, and there's a lot of face chats that can happen, which is great. And just looking at creative ways. So I happen to be very close with my neighbors. Creative ways we meet outside, in somebody's driveway, like while we're walking, or we take a walk together. Still some distance, we can do it some distance apart and not coming in contact with them, and different ways. Their kids are playing around the neighborhood in my yard and things like that, and ways you can still make connection if that's something you need to do. The face chat, certainly. I think a lot of what I'm going to talk about today with self-compassion, some of what we talked about yesterday, is if we start reaching out to connect via just audio phone or a face phone with people, especially elderly people, it's instead of getting the focus on me, let me put the focus on someone else and reach out. And everybody I've called or texted or emailed that I have not seen in some time and just asked how they're doing, they've all been so touched that I called them and checked in. And, so I think it really moves people that when you can do something like that. So that's a nice way, I think, to stay connected with people. And certainly forums like this is fantastic. Hang on, I just want to plug my computer back in. It fell out. Remove this. Okay. So if you'd like to relax and find a comfortable position, I just want you to close your eyes and reflect. And this is from a method to transform a suffering life into happiness, which is what we want to do. So Rinpoche is not only recommending people do this in their daily lives, but now it was the first thing he recommended that he said was beneficial for us to do for the coronavirus. And a lot of people, when you're home, you're thinking, what can I do? What can I do? This is something you can do. And these are all, we can let you know how you can access all of these materials. I'm just going to read the beginning, okay? And you'll reflect, if you're familiar with the Lamrim, you'll reflect on some of the, you'll notice some of the topics that are coming through. Essence encompassing all the Buddhas, originator of all the holy Dharma of scripture and realization, principle of all the Aryas intending virtue, in the glorious holy Gurus, I take refuge. Please, Gurus, bless my mind to become Dharma, Dharma to become the path, and the path to be without obstacles. Until I achieve Buddhahood, please bless me to be like youthful Norzang and Bodhisattva always crying, incorrectly following the virtuous friend with pure thought and action, seeing whatever is done is pure and accomplishing whatever is said and advised. Please bless me to see that this greatly meaningful body with freedoms and richnesses is difficult to find and easily perishes, that action and result are so profound, and that the sufferings of the evil-gone transmigratory beings are so difficult to bear. Therefore, please bless me to take refuge from the depths of my heart in the three rare sublime ones, to abandon negative karma and to accomplish virtue according to Dharma. In dependence upon that, even if I achieve the mere higher rebirth of a deva or human, I will still have to experience suffering endlessly in samsara because of not having abandoned and being under the control of the disturbing thought obscurations. Therefore, please bless me to reflect well upon the way of circling in samsara and to continuously follow day and night the path of the three types of precious trainings, the principal method for becoming free from samsara. In dependence upon that, even if I achieve mere liberation, since there is no sentient being of the six types who has not been my father and mother, please bless me to think I must fulfill their purpose and turn away from the lower happiness and nirvana. Then please bless me to generate precious bodhicitta by equalizing and exchanging myself with others, and to follow the conduct of the conqueror's sons, the six paramitas, and so forth. Having trained my mind in the common path in that way, I will not be upset even if I have to experience the sufferings of samsara for a long time. However, please bless me to look at sentient beings with extraordinary, unbearable compassion and to enter the quick path of the Vajrayana teachings. Then please bless me to protect my vows and samaya more than my life and to quickly accomplish the unified Vajradhara state in one brief lifetime of this degenerate time. May I not give rise to heresy for even a second in regard to the actions of the glorious Guru. May I see whatever actions are done as pure. With this devotion, may I receive the Guru's blessings in my heart. Magnificent and precious root Guru, please abide on the lotus seat at my heart. Guide me with your great kindness and grant me the realizations of your holy body, speech, and mind. So just taking a moment to quietly sit for a moment. And imagine that teacher, radiant light source above your crown, whichever teacher you feel connected to. And imagine that light dissolving into you right now, melting into your heart. Begin to bring your awareness to your breath, a normal, natural breath. And we're just noticing the inhalation and the lungs expanding. Maybe your abdomen is shifting. The exhalation. Just stay there for a few moments. Should your awareness shift and be distracted and run after something else, just observe and gently bring it back to the breath. The beginning of our self-compassion work is that fundamental taking care of ourselves. Basically, even starting with the breath. So just here, as you're simply trying to work, trying to follow the breath, let's find that gratitude for ourselves that we can do a meditation like this, and that we're able to have a simple inhalation and a simple exhalation. The people that are struggling with this virus, that could be a matter of life or death for them. But right now, all of us sitting here, it seems to work very automatically. Settle into that space for a moment, really appreciating the basic nature of breathing. We're not struggling for air right now. What if we had some internal words related to this, such as, I inhale, I'm okay. I exhale, I'm okay. Now, because you're okay and you can breathe, see if it can bring a small smile to your face. What if you have that happening externally? Just this small smile to your face. It starts there. This compassion for myself because I'm okay. Sometimes the external of what we're showing on our face can affect the internal in our mind. We know very much that the internal affects the external. how we're feeling inside, what our attitude is, creates often what shows up on our face, and then gets manifest in our body, speech, and mind. It comes out into the world. So now we're going to work the other way. The little smile on the outside. And as you inhale, that's your care for yourself. That's kindness to myself coming in. In a sense, smiling inside now. Every time you inhale. And as a lot of us are concerned about the world right now, the vulnerable, countries like Italy and Spain that are really struggling, as we exhale, we're going to send those good wishes, all that kindness out to the world. Inhale to ourselves, loving ourselves, bringing the care to ourselves as best as you can, and the exhalation from a nice place in us that we have, because we're caring for ourselves, we spread that and send that out to the world. So in making us more whole, calmer, more peaceful, by taking care of ourselves, that's what we can send out to the world and be more of a support. If we can roll this into our practices, may it help us reach that fully enlightened state as a Buddha, fully awakened being, because then we're unlimited in helping all living beings. So for that purpose in mind right now is why we're going to get together, is the basis of our getting together. So please relax and slowly can open your eyes. That meditation is very simple to do if you get lost and you're feeling stressed or toppled. If you're in excruciating pain, for instance, it's just that going back to the breath, the fact that you can breathe is one of the basis of life, obviously. And just a fantastic thing that right now some people are struggling. So we can do this. So it's just a very easy thing. And then because we also feel we want to take care of the world, as we exhale, let's send out that peace and happiness and that kindness to the planet. I'm going to talk a little bit about self-compassion. And I want to bring in this wonderful Kristen Neff. Some of you may have read her book on self-compassion. She's got some exercises, one of which I want to do today with all of you. But I just want to talk in general about self-compassion. This key, in a sense, to self-acceptance starts with having compassion for yourself. How can we do that? What happens when we get separated from that? And everything starts breaking down. And what happens also is we are out there in the world normally, and we're bouncing off of all the other people and situations we come in contact with. So right now, that's not the case. So we can do a little deeper work, and you can do deeper work yourself at home during this time. It can be a really, really valuable time if we can direct and use the time wisely. So how do we get to this? If we're not accepting ourselves, I won't be able to have compassion for myself. Okay. Contemporary culture, I find, makes it hard for many of us to have compassion for ourselves. And when we lack self-compassion, again, I mentioned we're less self-accepting, less self-tolerant, less kind to ourselves, okay? So self-compassion is very, very different than narcissistic self-absorption. I just want to make that distinction. Very different from narcissistic self-absorption. Truly self-compassionate people take care of themselves while being attentive to feelings and needs of those around them. So that's a big difference. Again, you're still focused of that underlying, in our case, Mahayana motivation, that I'd like to reach a fully awakened state so I can benefit all living beings. But you do reach a point on the path when you realize, I actually need to get enlightened before I can really help. So we know we have to make this effort with ourselves, but I don't lose the motivation is that it's only just about me, and I'm going to do this regardless of who I'm helping or harming or how I interfere with them. So again, truly self-compassionate people, they take care of themselves with that attentiveness to the people around them and the needs around them. And in fact, mental and physical health comes from being kind to ourselves, and that enables us to take better care of other people. So it all fits together. And from yesterday's talk, I read that quote, the bit from His Holiness the Karmapa's book, Interconnected. And he talks about that interconnected interdependence of all of us. So in a sense, this is what I can do for the planet, is also practice self-compassion. Okay. Self-compassion as well should not be confused with self-pity. Self-pity becomes the ruminating loop in the mind. You get caught up. We get caught up in our own problems. We get caught up in feeling sorry for ourselves. And then as a result of that, I'm oblivious to the world around me. So I'm not able to help because it's all about me, myself, I'm like this, I'm like this. It starts solidifying. It's very common though. Many, many people get stuck in this loop. Okay. Self-pity is a form of self-absorption, whereas self-compassion allows us to see our difficulties within the larger context of shared human experience. Shared humanity, I call it a lot, okay? Because of its narrow zoom lens vision, this is self-pity. Self-pity tends to blow up the situation so that even a small problem appears overwhelming and unbearable. How many times have we done this, right? Okay, in contrast, self-compassion affords a sense of proportion proportion again, that helps us deal with our predicaments and suffering in more constructive ways. So again, it's interesting, this self-absorption. It's one thing with self-compassion to notice, I'm suffering from depression, you might say. I have chronic pain. And the thing is, I'm not in the chronic pain alone, self-compassion says. There are countless beings around the planet in chronic pain. There are countless beings around the planet confined to a wheelchair the way I am. And then suddenly you start looking at the situation you have to take care of that. I'm suffering from anxiety and depression, someone might say, okay? So are so many others. You're not alone in that. It may not feel good, but what if I have that focus again about, wow, there's so many others also going through this. Some people have, I've been on a lot of texts and a lot of emails and a lot of phone calls of the last couple of weeks with people that have been struggling. And we keep seeming to come back to a number of us, how good we have it in this situation right now. So can you reflect a bit on, do you have shelter? I think most of you do, because you're on internet right now. And in order to have internet, you could be at your library, but I think my library's closed in the town right now. And it is Sunday, so a lot of libraries are closed on Sunday. So I believe if you've got a home and you have internet, that's pretty cool. That's amazing, right? And then you probably have food, and clearly you have clothing, those of you I can see. So we've got these fantastic situations, even though the world is going through something right now, something pretty big. But still, so let's look at the positive when I'm doing that and realize there is this interconnected quality there. There is this thing, and you know what's interesting, and this is hard to imagine if you're really suffering from a lot of mental problems, physical problems, is somebody's always got it worse than you. So, and it's a way I'm okay. Again, I'm okay, I can do this. I'm struggling, but I'm okay, I can do it. I had a very interesting experience yesterday, right after I finished the class. I went downstairs to the bathroom, actually to get something down, and it's just a little laundry room area. And there was a sewer clog to my house. So there was sewage all over the laundry room into the basement. That was a really interesting, I thought I must be really purifying, right? So, but I didn't expect that. And then I had all this other stuff I was supposed to do yesterday, and ended up, it was 3 to 4 hours of time by, getting the people and getting the people to come to do it and cleaning up, which the whole thing was about 3 to 4 hours. And in the process was the fact that they could come so quickly yesterday, and they did not overcharge me, was the second thing. And then the third thing is when me and the guy had a really nice connection. And I just thought of this guy, like his job is dealing with sewage, like, because I was struggling just cleaning it up, with a mask and gloves on, and, and just, my interaction with him, which was lovely, how great it was that they could come. I had the money to pay for it. It wasn't that expensive. I mean, it was extraordinary how you could be moaning about it. It could be, but it's like life throws that stuff at us. It wasn't what I expected. Fortunately, easily resolvable like that. And then I did need to go to the store yesterday. So in our self-compassion, we're going to do a little exercise in a moment. In our self-compassion, instead of focused on me and getting into the store and what I needed, okay, my local big grocery chain, right, the shelves were empty. Not completely empty, but some of the things I needed, it just, I'm sure it's very challenging for them to try to be restocking. So I went to another store, and they're a really well-run store, a smaller kind of operating store, not as big as a grocery store. Many of you are familiar with this store. went to another store and they were fully well stocked. And I know their employee practices. I've known some people that have worked for them and they say they were a great employer. And as I went in the store, and they took very good precautions of one person, like you could not go in the store till somebody had come out, and outside the store is the hand sanitizer, and they were wiping down carts for you. I mean, they really took precautions. And I went into the store, and then as I was moving around the store and seeing the workers there, I just kept thanking them for being there and thanking them for taking care of the store so well and taking care of us and thanking them for restocking. And so part of, my self-compassion is I did need some of this food, and yet I can still, from that space, recognizing that, think about those people around me. So not from a place of pity of like, oh my goodness, this virus and what happened and this is horrible, but from, wow, okay, and let me think about the larger context again of shared human experience. Again, check if you're blowing up your situation. That's self-pity. When is it insurmountable in my mind and I cannot think of it? So even a small problem appears overwhelming and unbearable. Okay, so again, self-compassion asks for a sense of proportion. Can I put this in to proportion with all the other beings right now? I've had some issues. I've got many friends taking care of elderly parents. I was just doing this up until last year. As many of you know, the elderly parents are not living with my friends. They're either in their own homes or they're in some sort of senior facility. Nursing home, assisted living, or independent living, okay? Well, all of those places in my area are locked down. You can't go in to see your relative. You can drop things off for them at the front desk. You're not allowed entrance in. So some of them are going to like a glass window, like outside their room, to put their hand on the window, to communicate that way, and then they have them on the phone. So it's like heartbreaking for me that, like, if my father were alive right now, it would be very challenging trying to support him and keep him buoyant and just to make contact, and also hoping that he's not going to get the virus. So can I put my problem in perspective with that and think about other people like that? So trying not to fall into self-pity. Okay, let me just, whoops, I keep opening the wrong window. Here we go. Self-compassion, in addition, is not self-gratification. Okay, self-compassion, it's not an impulse to treat ourselves. Okay, because the virus is happening, I'm gonna get the Ben and Jerry's and eat the entire pint myself. Okay, though sometimes mindfully and upon self-reflection, we may decide to have a treat. So there is a difference, okay? So, there I was in the store and I decided to buy this one item that I have not bought in a long time to have a treat, but I'm not gonna eat the entire bag myself, like at one sitting. So again, but it's not just about, let me overindulge right now because I'm locked down in my house. Okay, so, because then later you're gonna feel bad about it, but you can have a treat. And I've had stuff where I wanted to watch the news, but I don't watch too much of the news. This is another way, please, to take care of yourself. The news is alarming, okay? Do I need more alarm? I know what's going on, basically, as far as there's a health problem right now on the planet. And you know what? Fortunately, it doesn't kill everybody. And it doesn't kill the majority of the people that get it. So this is different than a virus like Ebola or Marburg or HIV when it first came out. This is not the case with this virus. For a vulnerable population, yes, it's extremely serious, okay? But for most of us, so can I, put that into perspective? And I would say to try to limit, out of your self-compassion, limit how much you're checking the news on your phone, on your computer, or watching news on TV. Because it can be very alarming to, over and over to go through the same things because you're home and you're not sure what else to do. There's many other wonderful things you can do. So you don't need to, because these things are happening, but what I've done is my treat might be if there's something I decide I want to look at on my phone later, but only after I get all these things done that I had intended to do. And then I might have a little half an hour look at something like that. So can I set up something that's reasonable, okay? And self-compassion as well, okay, is not beating yourself up because you did eat the whole pint of ice cream, okay? Or buying that thing that you wanted to buy, okay? So if you do go there, self-compassion doesn't beat you up. You're just kind of like, yep, that's what happened, and move on. You don't need to dwell on it. And how wonderful that you could buy a pint of ice cream like that. Okay, so let's look at self-esteem. Self-compassion is not exactly the same as self-esteem. With self-compassion, we relate to ourselves, okay, especially our struggles and failures, with understanding, kindness, and acceptance. Again, understanding, kindness, and acceptance. Those three words, for those of you that struggle with a lack of self-compassion, put those words on your refrigerator this week. Understanding, kindness, and acceptance. Just note your relationship with them. Are you being kind to yourself? What are you not accepting about yourself sometimes? Okay. Self-compassion is a gentle, caring, clear-seeing, okay, yet non-judgmental, that's a big word, non-judgmental orientation of our heart and mind toward our own suffering and needs. Again, this is from a course I teach about compassion and self-compassion. Self-compassion is a gentle, caring, clear-seeing. We try to see as clearly as we can and have that relationship in proportion with everything else, yet non-judgmental orientation of our heart and mind toward our own suffering and needs. I love the gentle part. Lama Yeshe was always about be gentle with yourself, then you'll be gentle with others. Okay. Self-esteem, on the other hand, is self-regard based on self-evaluation. So how I see myself based on how I'm doing, in a sense. While self-compassion may contribute to increased self-esteem, it does not depend on it. So you don't need the external, oh, she's very successful. You don't need that to be self-compassionate. And the self-compassionate over time will begin to be a springboard and a lovely buoyant cushion to build better and healthier self-esteem for you. So again, self-esteem is self-regard based on self-evaluation. Then I grow that confidence because I've accomplished this and I've done that and I can do this and I know these are my limits, but these are what I can do. But self-compassion, again, a gentle, caring, clear-seeing, yet non-judgmental orientation of our heart and mind toward our own suffering and needs. And this is something I find so interesting. I don't know if you experience this as well. My Asian sisters and brothers, particularly those not American Asian, not Asian Americans, but people from other countries, I'm very close with cousins of Lama Zopa Rinpoche who live in Queens, New York. Two parents from the Laudo region of Nepal and 4 children. One of the children was a monk at Kopan. He disrobed and he is an Uber driver in New York. And the other 3 kids are at university. One is near graduation and they're studying various things. And it's a wonderful family and I'm very close with them. And I visit them a couple times a year and have dinner and, you know, known them for many years. So I notice their kids as teenagers, and now they're in their 20s, they like to spend time with the parents. Saturday night, they're with the parents. Maybe one friend comes over. They do trips with the parents. They'll go to upstate New York and they'll have a picnic. And they're like, it's a very family-oriented thing. And I've been to many Sherpa gatherings they've had and many of the families are the same. And I was kind of fascinated by that. There's no attitude from the kids. There's no mouthing off to the parents. And they have their devices, and the kids are on their phones, and it's not about a technology thing. It's about some sort of simple respect that they all have, self-respect, and the way they treat each other from that space. And I think it's related to self-compassion, but it's fascinating. And so I noticed with some Sherpa Tibetan families I'm close with, is it was good enough that they were alive. It was good enough that they were alive. It wasn't that they had to accomplish anything when they were growing up, the way the kids were raised. I don't know about your upbringing, okay, but a lot of people I know, it was kind of, you were valued when you got good grades, and there was punishment when you didn't. And you were valued when you made that club, or you did that, or and there was a lot of comparison in the world I grew up in. So you'd look at, and so then the kids would feed back to the parent, so-and-so's mother lets her do this. So-and-so's father is like that, because the parents are doing it to the kids do it back to the parents. And then there becomes more of a divide. This family in Queens, they don't do that. They don't do that. There's somehow this value on the education anyway, with the way they're raised, where the kids just know they have to do their work. They don't do perfect in everything in all their courses, but there's a real value on, and maybe because they come from a poor country, so they really have this appreciation for getting an education, which they wouldn't have as much access to in Nepal. But I've asked them about it as well, and they talk about this mutual respect. And there's another family I know, non-Asian, European mother and an American father, 3 kids that I've known since childhood. I've known the kids since birth, actually. And they also have a lot of respect. And they said that the same thing, that they never valued the kids based on their performance. It was just accepting who they were and not trying to make them be somebody they weren't. So I think a lot of this relates to our own level of self-compassion, how we learned. And I think it's just a beautiful thing of how you are just valued as a person. It's not that you're valued based on how good you were at this or that. That you feel from the beginning you're a complete person, acknowledged in your own right as an individual. And that lends to this better balance in your mind, like that. So, and some researchers have discovered this achievement-dependent self-esteem, okay, makes us vulnerable to feelings of inadequacy and failure when things don't unfold as expected. And I think we've all been in that vein where, and especially if you're in a situation and other people compare you to people similar to you, and you're not doing as well, and then you start comparing yourself and being like, oh, well, other people my age at this thing are doing this, and I'm not doing that. What about just valuing yourself for who you are? Okay, because inside there is deep beauty. But when I start looking at other people, I miss that point. Okay. Everybody okay? Everybody with me? Okay. Okay, thumbs up there. Okay, I want to do a little exercise, and I want to, here we go. Where did I put my little exercise? Hang on 1 second. See if I can find this. I find this really helpful. If you have a piece of paper near you, feel free to write down, but you don't have to, but it can be helpful if you certainly struggle from lack of self-compassion. So feel free if you want to get a pen and paper. Okay, I'd like you to think when you had a close friend who was really struggling in any way, what you reflect right now, how would you respond to this friend in the situation? Okay, especially when you are at your best. When you're at your best. Okay, feel free to write down, to jot down what you typically do. And this is thank you to Kristen Neff. I love her exercises, they're very helpful. Write down what you typically do, what you would say. Just jot down a few notes. And note the tone in which you typically talk to your friends. So how are you going to respond to this friend? And just note that tone and how you would respond to them in this situation. And if you don't want to write down, walk through it in your mind right now as if you're in that situation. Friend is struggling. They come to you or you notice. Go through the role play of how you would respond. Okay, I'd like you to reflect now. Step number 2. Think about times when you feel bad about yourself or are struggling. Times when you feel bad about yourself or are struggling. How do you typically respond to yourself in these situations? And jot that down, what you typically do or say, and note the tone in which you talk to yourself. And I'll be right back. Okay. Did you notice a difference? And if so, why is there a difference? Ask yourself. So what factors or fears come into play that lead you to treat yourself and others so differently? Have an exploration, the factors and fears that come into play that allow me to treat myself differently if I did. So explore that for a moment. Okay, of the people I can see, a lot of you I know don't have your cameras on. I imagine you sitting there in your pajamas. That's fine. Those of you, just a show of hands, did you treat yourself differently than your close friend? How many people? Okay, there's a majority so far of the people that, that I can see. So interesting, isn't it? Interesting to notice. So here's one last step right now. One last step. If you want to jot down, please write down how you think things might change if you responded to yourself in the same way you responded to your close friend when they're suffering. Again, how do you think things might change if you responded to yourself in the same way that you would to a dear friend who's suffering? Helpful to remind yourself you are also a sentient being. You are also a sentient being, meaning in this tradition, if you have a motivation in the morning or throughout the day, or you try to rekindle that motivation from time to time, it's that we want to get enlightened so we can benefit all living beings, all sentient beings. Well, that includes you. You're also a sentient being. So somehow, sometimes we leave ourselves out of that equation. So it's nice to think about, yes, you are a living being and you deserve as much. Okay. So interesting thing, you can consider, continue to look at that if you'd like. Okay. Self-esteem and self-compassion, a little bit more on this. And let me ask for a moment just to interject. Any questions so far? Any comments right now? Okay, so the audio is cutting in and out. Okay, most people seem to have. Okay, here's a comment. When not having compassion for self, I think most of you can see this. I've heard this called spiritual bypassing. Certainly, I've heard that. I've heard those terms as well. Any questions, or thank you for the comments. Any questions or comments? And I even think it might be called not necessarily spiritual bypassing. emotional bypassing, things like that. It's just obviously a bypassing way of that. Okay, and you can also unmute your mic if you want to talk. Okay. Okay, what is the practice in the moment when we find ourselves having harsh self-talk? Yeah, and most people found more compassionate with your friend. Okay, what is the practice in the moment when we find ourselves having harsh self-talk? The beginning, I would start with the basic mindfulness practice of breathing, a deeper breath. A deeper breath, and I note, just noting, I'm suffering. An exhalation, I'm suffering. An inhalation, I'm uncomfortable. Exhalation, I'm uncomfortable. First, I'm just there. And then remembering, if you'd like, the little smile on our face. External, if I have that external, because I haven't been that kind to myself and like, didn't really work, can I go and take it internal? And then I do that when I inhale. And when I exhale, sending that out also to all the beings on the planet that treat themselves this way. And then another exhalation, smiling inside. Why? I'm okay. I'm good enough. And then exhalation, sending that out to all the people on the planet. You could try a little bit like that, if that's helpful. There's a lot of different techniques and things. So slowly, the beginning is the awareness that I'm doing it. So this exercise was really to realize like, yeah, I'm not treating myself at all the way I would treat. The compassion I show to others, I'm not showing it to myself. So why don't you practice the exercise of what you would say, your tone, everything with the close friend. And why don't I try that on myself the next time I get hard on myself? Does that help? That was for Lance. Okay. Okay, let me go on a little bit more here before another thing I'm going to try with self-esteem and self-compassion. Is it possible to have the benefits associated with high self-esteem, confidence and optimism, for example, okay, without the negative side effects of its pursuit, meaning the competitive nature of, okay, can self-esteem and self-compassion be compatible? Okay, they can be if self-esteem is achieved as a byproduct, okay, rather than pursued directly for its own sake. So, you did a project at work and you want to do a good job because you're kind of conscientious that way. And you did it and you really put everything into it and all that, not concerned about competition with other people and how they were going to view you, but because I wanted to do this project well. That's how I value my work ethic and things. And then the boss comes back to you and says, this was a great job, and promotes you. Over time, like your work has been like that, just out of your own care for yourself that you want to do a conscientious good job. And as a result of that, you get promoted and that builds your confidence. So again, I think it can be achieved as a byproduct rather than pursuing it directly for its own sake. The active ingredient we want from self-esteem is self-liking. Okay, and I'm going to separate this from, are you ready for these words? Self-perfecting, self-aggrandizing, or self-promoting. Self-liking. Self-liking implies an easygoing peace with ourselves. An easygoing peace with ourselves. Crucially, the self-liking that comes from self-compassion is devoid of pride. Okay, self-compassion combines self-worth and genuine humility. So these are big differences. Again, self-liking applies an easygoing peace with ourselves. Okay, and that self-liking that comes from self-compassion is not caught up in pride and arrogance and haughtiness and things like that. I'm just being who I am. And I know that being who I am means I'm going to suffer at times and make mistakes. That's being who I am. You know, I honestly felt, if I can reflect now, my first half hour or 20 minutes on this call, in this meeting, I was a bit not centered, you know, and I didn't feel like I was really giving my best kind of thing to get myself together, because I was a little late on the call and I couldn't log in. And so I'm like, yeah, well, you know, that's as good as I could do. I was giving it my best. Happy to show up. I'm okay. It's not a prideful thing if I needed to be perfect. Oh my goodness, it's not going to be the best class. No, I'm just here with you, and we're trying to make the best of this. So I'm kind of like easygoing with myself. I'm like, well, you know, this is how it is. Just being myself. And then from that, it's a gentle approach of, you know, my humility of like, yeah, you know, not maybe doing the most perfect things like that. But the reason is it comes from my own, I'm okay anyway. I'm okay regardless if this is a perfect talk or not. I'm still the same me I was when I woke up this morning before I started the talk. So why would that be any different? Then it's still me trying to give it my best shot. So I think if you could fold that in to your experiences as much as you can, of looking at those different values, those different setups, are you setting yourself up that things have to be perfect? Are you setting yourself up because every other 28-year-old on the planet or 31-year-old is doing this now and is there? They're not all doing it the same. They're not. Nobody is. So if I'm setting myself up, it's just a matter of, I'm doing this. This is what I'm capable of doing right now. And that's good enough. That's pretty good. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Fantastic, right? And then the Tibetans have a saying regarding perfectionistic self-esteem. Perfectionistic self-esteem, it's not helpful. And they're not necessarily, it's interesting, they don't have as much of this competitiveness. Now, in the monasteries, I have seen the monks in a very jovial way, how they do their debating, the monks and nuns, and they know who the best are. And they know, but they don't necessarily get into a thing of some of the cultures we may have been raised in, where you're really not worthy if you're not competing and you're not doing as good as that person. We see this in sports all the time, and it's in the news constantly around sports. I don't know about any of you, but it's kind of nice to have a break from the sports or all the things. I do feel for the newscasters, the sports newscasters have nothing to talk about. Right. And I'm a little disappointed about, you know, the opening day of baseball season, because I'm a big baseball fan, but it's nice to have a little break from that level of competition in the United States. It's interesting how sports is kind of at the top for a lot of people. And, you know, and it creates this big competitive culture. I see that in my area during football season, which is not something I'm particularly interested in, but I just see how everybody gets on these things, and then it starts to seep into your mind, and you start running your families like that and things like that. Okay, let me just look at a few comments made. Yeah, so that's interesting from Ross. Judgment of others contributes to your own lack of taking care of yourself. You know, if somebody's late for a talk, he's saying, you can read, you get upset. You know, they need to be perfect. They need to be on time. And now it's kind of like with an easygoing, gentle way about yourself, you realize, okay, like, yeah, I don't need to be judgmental like that. I can just, when it comes on, it comes on. Okay. Okay. Why do we sometimes have a tendency to be more critical of others when we're actually feeling very critical towards ourselves, putting our stuff onto others? I think that probably can work from the flailing that we do of our ability to want to deny suffering. We're not able to really deal with the first noble truth the Buddha taught, was there's suffering. And there's a big evasion of that in our culture, especially in the United States. I don't think everybody's from the United States here or in the States right now. There's a tendency to deny any suffering and to find other ways to ignore it. So when it rears its head, I don't really have coping mechanisms. And we're going to do a little exercise in a moment about that. I don't have coping mechanisms. So then as a result of feeling bad about myself and the suffering that I'm in, I'm not going to deal with it. So I'm going to lash on to others. I'm going to take it out on others. And I think that becomes a habit. The other thing is we may notice other people doing that at times. So we feel that it's okay to do that. You know, I notice patterns in my own upbringing where from an older brother and sister influencing me, then I acted that way and thought that that behavior was okay when it really wasn't. So does that make sense for Angelica? And I do notice, and I'll put it this way, I'm very close, my niece, and I've mentioned this before, this example, my niece who, actually Angelica's close to your age. I'm very close with my niece. She's wonderful. She's great. And she was supposed to come for a sleepover tonight. She's in her late 20s, but we're debating whether that's a wise thing to do right now, even though she's sequestered on her own and I'm sequestered on my own. But, you know, we feel like, should we really comply? And so some years ago, she was a teenager and I was in a large store like a Costco, and I ran into her mom in the store, my sister-in-law. And I've told this story before. Anyway, I saw, and I think I was living in California and had come back, and there I was in the store and I saw my sister-in-law and I said, hey, great. And she said, oh, the kids are here. And I said, oh, they're in another part of the store because it's a big store. And she took her phone, my sister-in-law, pushed my niece's phone button to call her and handed the phone to me. Okay, what came up on my niece's phone was mom. And how does my niece answer the phone? And this is her response. What? That's how she answered the phone. And it's me on the phone now. And I said to her, oh, you know, hello to you, bundle of sunshine. And then she hears my voice. She sounded very embarrassed. And then I hear this kind of like, oh, hi, Aunt Amy, like embarrassed. And so later, my niece is cognizant enough, aware enough. And she said to me later, because I think I said to her at one point, well, that was a special greeting. I said, do you talk to your mom like that all the time? Because I wasn't around a lot. And she said, I don't know why I do that. She goes, I don't know why, like, mom gets the most special treatment from me. Like, and I think it's just habit. And also mom is, in that case, your closest link, your most intimate, precious being. And so you feel relaxed to be able to do stuff like that. We all have one special or a couple of really close beings that we can kind of, you know, let our hair down, so to speak. I don't have a lot of hair to let down right now, but in that case, so she felt comfortable enough. And we have those people we lean on that we cry to, we rant to, like that, and it just becomes habit. So the thing is, if we start adjusting our focus, this is my strongest rope on the boat, my biggest attachment, my most precious being, right? Actually, what I need to do is take extra care with them and treat them. We'd like to treat everybody special. We'd like to treat everybody well. Nice. But this special person, even more so. So can I start practicing, and you might have to do it on your cushion, meaning reflection, deeper reflection alone without them in front of you. Practice role plays like that with them in front of you, and you have to start choosing a new way to behave. I did this with my own mother years ago, because every time I'd come in from California and visit, we'd start pushing each other's buttons and get into this really unhealthy pattern that neither of us wanted to get into, okay? So really happy. What I did is on my cushion started exercising, practicing a new way to be with her. Even if she said the same things, I was going to practice a new behavioral pattern. Okay, over and over I did it on my cushion. So finally I come back in contact with her in person and it's a little bit more accessible. I'm not going to get it perfect every time, but the chances are it can be more and more accessible, which it was. Again, basic practice levels. Here's 3 steps right now. I've mentioned this before in other classes, 3 steps. Number 1 is awareness. You become aware of your mind, meaning what's the pattern I'm perpetuating? Or I can't believe I just said that to my mother or my friend. I really didn't want to be there. Later I reflect like, oh my gosh, completely out of control with my mind, completely out of control with my speech. Why did I do it? Because I just had a lot of patterns of doing that. That's all. Again, self-compassion in a gentle, easy, caring way for myself. I just did it. I'm a human being. I messed up again, but that's not all that I am. But I can fix this. I can fix it. Gentle, caring, easy way with myself. Okay, there it is again. Awareness, that's number 1. Step number 2, if you don't like what you were aware of, your behavior, some sort of behavior, number 2, try something different. It's that simple, try something different. So I sat down on my cushion and thought, okay, how would I like to respond? How do I respond to this person I really like that I always respond nicely to, as opposed to this person that I take for granted and don't respond nicely to? So what if I try practicing talking to this person that I don't respond nicely to the way I would respond to somebody nicely, and practice that for a week over and over on my cushion, and try it then when I'm in person with them. Try a little bit slowly, maybe not immediately responding, maybe pausing, taking a breath when they say something and looking at, how can I do this differently? How would I respond differently? Step number 3, if you were able to respond differently and that worked and it was helpful, okay, number 3 is do it again. Do it again and do it again and do it again until it becomes automatic. So those are ways I found that, in response to Angelica's comment and question, is the work we have to do that is helpful. And it does take effort. It does take effort. And thank you, Dr. Barry. I think if it's the Dr. Barry who's the monk in Dharamsala, is it that Dr. Barry? He's an old friend and it's very helpful. He's giving, there's a lot of info about the different symptoms and things like that. So, okay, I want to let you know something else. Here's another thing. So I hope that was helpful. When we were talking about perfectionist self-esteem, this is how the Tibetans regard this. Perfectionist self-esteem is not that helpful. They say, then you have envy toward the above, competitiveness towards the equal, and contempt toward the lower. And these, they say, often lie at the root of our dissatisfaction and unhappiness. Perfectionist self-esteem, okay? In cultivating self-compassion, we don't evaluate, that's a key word, evaluate ourselves according to our worldly successes. That gets into self-esteem. Self-compassion, we don't evaluate ourselves according to worldly successes. We don't compare ourselves with others. Instead, we acknowledge our shortcomings and failings with patience, understanding, and kindness. Once again, we mentioned the 3 words on the refrigerator, if you want to put them. 2 of them were understanding and kindness, I think. I can't remember where that section was, but here's another 3 words: patience, understanding, and kindness. I think one of the other words was acceptance. You can have 4 words on your refrigerator, or 4 words that pop up on your phone every morning. Patience, understanding, kindness, acceptance. Okay, I'm acknowledging shortcomings and failings. Again, my little exercise this morning, my first 20 minutes, patience. Okay, I'm getting it together. I'm understanding, yep, I need, next time for the Tuesday night class, I'm gonna get here earlier. I'm gonna get this all set up earlier. That's what I understand now I need to do. Kindness towards myself, yep, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna beat myself up about it. And my acceptance, is this is who I am. I can only give it my best shot here. So we view our problems again, this is self-compassion, within the larger context of our shared humanity. Again, the perspective, the proportion. I'm viewing my problems within the larger context of our shared humanity. So self-compassion, unlike self-esteem, lets us feel more connected with other people. Okay, more positively disposed towards them. Finally, self-compassion lets us be honest with ourselves. With its attitude of acceptance, self-compassion promotes a realistic understanding of our situation. So, and our capacity for self-compassion might also be quite flexible, and it's amenable to change. It's amenable to change, okay? And we see signs of people's lack of self-compassion, okay, which molts into disliking, loathing, hatred, just about everywhere we look in many forms. People stay in abusive relationships due to their lack of self-compassion. They starve themselves due to their lack of self-compassion. They overwork. They neglect personal needs. They lash out at people. They criticize. They feel anxious and depressed. That's all. It's just that we've missed the boat a little bit on self-compassion. That's all. It's very common. It's very common. I don't need to make more out of it. It's more like, okay, now I need a little self-care time. Okay. But with that, the bigger scope, so that I can be more available for others too. Self-caring, an expression of self-compassion, is an instinct that not just humans, but all sentient beings share. So animals have this kind of self-care as well. Okay. Whereas self-hatred, okay, is rooted in the very same self-caring instinct though. Okay. Hatred is a form of caring. Okay. We don't hate if we don't care, like that. Self-hatred comes from caring a lot, but being unable to accept or forgive our imperfect selves. Again, self-hatred comes from caring a lot, but being unable to accept or forgive our imperfect selves. Okay, so from psychologist Kristen Neff, she's done a lot of work with self-compassion. She has a book on self-compassion. Meditations, exercise is really helpful. We're going to do another meditation in a moment. She has a systematic scientific approach to self-compassion that might be helpful to look at. Okay, she's got 3 categories. Self-kindness, number 1. Common humanity, number 2. And number 3, mindfulness. Again, self-kindness, common humanity, I call it shared humanity as well, same thing, mindfulness. She explains self-kindness, similar to what we've been talking about, as relating to our shortcomings and difficulties with kindness, understanding, and acceptance rather than negative judgment. Again, people say this is hard to do. We have to practice a little bit. So I notice if I'm internally criticizing myself. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Can you just put a smile externally on your face? Okay. Let it penetrate to a smile inside. Why? Because I'm aware right now. I'm noticing. That's fantastic. Many on the planet not even attempting to notice what's going on in their mind. I'm just noticing the internal criticism right now, the hatred inside, the negative judgment inside. Just take a deep breath and you exhale it out and you let it go, letting that go. Inhaling possibly something positive, exhaling something negative. Inhaling, I'm okay, good enough. Exhaling, anything that prevents that from my thinking that. So slowly, just noticing, bringing the kindness, understanding, acceptance. And again, reflecting on, If this were a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine feeling this way, how would I respond to them? Would I be criticizing them like this? The only reason I'm criticizing myself like this is because I've done it before. I've just got a deeper trench of that because I'm doing it a lot. Time to start making the change. We can do it. We can do this. Okay. That's the self-kindness she mentions. Again, relating to our shortcomings and difficulties with kindness, understanding, and acceptance, rather than negative judgment. Number 2, common humanity or shared humanity is how we perceive our problems and suffering within the context of shared human experience. This was that proportional looking. Mindfulness, number 3, the ability to hold painful experiences in awareness rather than over-identifying with them through obsessive, ruminating thinking or desperately trying to fix them. Basic mindfulness, just staying there, okay? So I want you to look at, I'm going to read some lines to you, okay? And I want you, in your mind, do you agree or disagree, okay? And how strongly with the following statements I'm going to make. Very strongly, somewhat, or not at all. And you can make your own notes if you like, okay? Number 1, I try to be understanding and patient toward those aspects of my personality I don't like. Again, I try to be understanding and patient towards those aspects of my personality I don't like. How do you feel? Very strongly, you agree or disagree? Somewhat or not at all, agree or disagree? And that happens to be an expression in the realm of self-kindness. She would categorize self-kindness. Here's another one related to self-kindness. Number 2, reflect on this. When I'm going through a very hard time, I give myself the caring and tenderness I need. Do you agree or disagree very strongly, somewhat, or not at all? Here's one related to common humanity. When I feel inadequate in some way, I try to remind myself that feelings of inadequacy are shared by most people. How do you feel about that one? Agree or disagree strongly, somewhat, or not at all? Here's another one related to common or shared humanity. When things are going badly for me, I see the difficulties as part of life that everyone goes through. Do you agree or disagree? How strongly? Here's one related, the last 2 are related to mindfulness, okay? When I'm feeling down, I try to approach my feelings with curiosity and openness. And here's the last one. When I fail at something important to me, I try to keep things in perspective. Okay, and before I come into a little bit more on these exercises, these questions, I just want to go back to, okay, so the Dr. Barry is Barry who's with us here today. Sorry, there you are, Barry. Hi. Thank you very much for your input about the virus, very helpful. And okay, repeat the sentence on self-hatred. Okay, yes, let me repeat that for you. Thank you. Okay. Self-caring, let me go back to that a minute. An expression of self-compassion is an instinct that not just humans, but all sentient beings have. They all share. Self-hatred is rooted in the very same self-caring instinct, by the way. Hatred is a form of caring, okay? You don't hate if you don't care, basically, is what they're saying, but self-hatred comes from caring a lot, but being unable to accept or forgive our imperfect selves. Self-hatred, again, comes from caring a lot, but being unable to accept or forgive our imperfect selves. What do you, and just some comments right now, what do you think about that? Or how did you do with the 6 sentences about our own practice, mindfulness, shared humanity, self-kindness, things like that? How, everybody doing well with those, or some startling, interesting things coming up? So somebody, Ross strongly disagrees, found that he disagreed with a lot of the statements. Anybody else in that boat? Most of you doing well with the self-compassion? I see this kind of thing, okay. It's interesting, isn't it? Sorry, somebody want to comment?
I was just saying it depends on the moment, really.
Yes, it can be very individual for the moment. Gina failed the self-compassion quiz. Okay, here's the thing. Here's the thing, and this is a big part of our language, okay? Honestly, there's no failing the quiz. There's no ability to fail the quiz. It's simply, let's get into the curiosity. This is something I've gotten into the last few years that has so helped me when negative experiences arise in my mind. I used to have negative experiences arising, which causing negative behavior for me with my body, speech, and mind. And then I would feel badly about myself and say like, oh, I'm a nun. I shouldn't be thinking that or doing that or saying that or like that. Now I get curious instead. I don't get self-judgmental, self-critical in a negative way. I get curious. I wonder what caused me to say that. Let me observe. Let me go back. What were the triggers around me at the time when I said that thing to that person, or when my mind was kind of not happy or out of balance? Oh, well, let me look at the triggers. Well, I didn't get a lot of sleep the night before. I didn't eat very well that day. I had too many things scheduled that day. Had some other little thing that came up, like, okay, so what does that tell me? You need to go to bed early tonight, or you need to eat better, or you need to really take care of your sleep this next week and focus on that if you're not getting enough sleep. So I get curious now. I don't get kind of into the self-judgment of, I'm bad, I always do, I always do this. There's no failing. It's just for you to be aware of, oh, this is where I need some work. Isn't that exciting? And here's somebody, I didn't agree on anything. Yeah, that's where we are. We're just looking at this. Okay, fine. 3 things you mentioned earlier: understanding, kind acceptance are keys. Others think. Okay, great. Thank you, Nicole. So if they're startling, Patty, feel free is take time and go through them, and take time and reflect again and go, okay, that's where I need some work. I need some work with, maybe for some of you, it was more your shared humanity wasn't working. It's always my problems, me, it's all centered around me. For some of you, maybe I don't get really mindful. I don't apply the mindfulness thing when I could have just looked at that. And here we've got Karen from the UK. Giving yourself tenderness when you're going through, I feel, and you go back to the old patterns. And what happens is the old patterns are right there underneath the surface. Absolutely. They're very hard to battle back, but that's where we learn, that's where I need to make effort now. We make effort in many ways. Is it benefiting your mind, though, the things you're making effort in? Okay, so fantastic to look at. And Karen's in the UK, and I really worry about you guys because the UK seems to have a lot of cases, and I just worry about you guys with the virus. I've got family, my sister and her kids are in the UK, and my brother-in-law. So I hope you guys stay healthy. And Karen also is involved, runs a mindfulness center. She does amazing work and has come out with a new book. Karen, can you give us the title of the book again? I have it upstairs. So if you want to write that down, a really wonderful family, and she's come out with this new book. And okay, much more compassionate towards myself now. Wonderful. But it varies depending on what challenges I'm facing. Okay, absolutely. Learn your triggers. What another healthy way of coping is learning our triggers. For instance, if you're very rough on that person closest to you, and you notice what I'm going to do is when I met with my mom years ago, when I would fly in from California, is I loved my mom. She was a wonderful mother. I couldn't have done any better, okay? But we would really get into it like mothers and daughters can do. And I would come and visit, and she really wanted me all to herself and didn't really want me to see any friends or do anything else, okay? Because she only got me like 2 or 3 weeks a year. Not a lot, really, when that's one of your main things in life, as it is with mothers, okay? So I learned, because I was rougher on her when I would see her because of her possessiveness, was, first of all, I learned to kind of accept her for who she was, that this was a big part of her life, her kids, and respect that. And I also learned I need to be more vigilant when I'm with her because she's a big trigger. So that's when I need to kick my vigilance into high gear and kind of go, I'm walking through the door from the airport. Okay, buckle your seatbelt, Amy. This is the time to practice. This is when I'm going to need a little bit more practice now. So that's your own wisdom for yourself. I'm not saying I'm any wise, special person, but where I just learned, yesterday we talked about the 8 verses of mind training. And one of them is, as soon as a delusion appears in my mind, may I be vigilant to apply the antidote. So I would learn that and be, okay, I need to be more vigilant when I'm with her. Okay. Slow process. Yeah. Okay. More compassionate to myself than other times, and most of them somewhat agree. So it's interesting. It is, this is a process. Please understand this is a process. And I want to do a meditation before we close, but we've started a little late. So if you can bear with me, we might go just a little bit over. What else do we have to do today, right? This is a process, as Anna Paula is saying. So give yourself the space and time. And sometimes, you know what? You're going to muck it up. And you're going to fall right back into the self-critical patterns. And we slowly are going to adapt. We're going to do this loving kindness thing. And there's Karen's book. And there's lovely Ross coming up with where you can buy it on Amazon. And there's Dr. Barry. Thank you, everybody. This is fantastic. So we're all, and isn't this cool how interconnected we are? Because some of you are connected to me, and some of you are connected to Thupten Kunga Center. And now we're kind of connected to each other. So one thing I also want to say in our connection is I want to thank Nicole and Rebecca for setting this up. I want to thank Thupten Kunga Center and all the beings involved with Thupten Kunga Center for making this possible. We have 3 more sessions on different topics you can find from their website. But what I want to mention is I don't need the support right now, but our centers do. So please, if you can find a way to contribute to Tuptenkunga Center if you'd like, or your local center. And here's something I want to mention now. I know some of you may have closed businesses, shops, you may have been laid off, and you may be out of work and not have an income coming in. And I know that's a struggle right now for everybody. The second part is some of you are not in that situation, and your financial situation, you're working from home or it hasn't changed that much. What I want to mention to some of you is you're probably not driving near as much as you were driving before. I mean, somebody sent me a shot of one of the LA freeways that I've been on many times, and it was empty. It's really kind of like we're living in this dystopian novel, right? That I would like to return to the library as quickly as possible. So if you're not, it's probably, I'm guessing, for those of you in the States, costing you 20 to 30 bucks every time you fill up your car with gas, on average, right? So you're not spending that money on gas, I take it. In the UK, it's going to cost you a little bit more when you fill up your car because the petrol's more expensive, okay? What if you decided to contribute that to the local center or Tuptenkunga Center? I couldn't stress it more. The centers are struggling because they're closed. They're doing online teachings. This is fantastic, the group we had. I know there was a charge for the teachings. It's pretty minimal. If you can reach into your pockets, and if you even look and you have a little bit more you want to offer, and I just think right now we've had about 30 to 35 people participating. And if each of them, you know, wanted to say 20 bucks, that's another $600 for the center, roughly. If somebody wants to go to $50, just think of the helps to keep these centers afloat, because unfortunately, I think after this, a number of businesses are going to end up not being able to continue. So let's hope it's not our centers, because I think there's more of a need than ever. So there's, I think on their website, a way to donate, and we can let you know. Okay. So from Tal, a note, Lama Zopa Rinpoche video. If we're able to watch attentively, let me explain this. Okay. Lama Zopa Rinpoche has roughly a 1 hour video that just came out, and he's giving what's called oral transmissions of the various practices and mantras he's recommended us to do for the coronavirus. Again, more of your faith with these practices, and if you have a connection with Rinpoche, the better it goes. I think the more you get out of that. It's still super beneficial. I know some of the practices and mantras are long and it takes time, and I'm happy if we ever want to set up a practice session for that. I'm more than happy to do. So what Rinpoche is saying is, this is what's called a lung, L-U-N-G. And a lung is simply, it means wind in Tibetan, and it means he's giving an oral transmission. Once you get that oral transmission where you hear it from their lips into your ears, the practice becomes stronger, more powerful for you when you do it. So, and what they're saying is, if you're listening attentively to that video, not distracted, not drinking and eating stuff in front of it and not talking to other people, but you're just as if you're in a class in person with Rinpoche, listening attentively, you will get that lung, you'll get that oral transmission. If you do, you create a guru-disciple relationship with anybody you take an oral transmission from. And what it means is you could read the sections in the Lam Rim on guru devotion, and it's mainly that you always want to keep that person in an esteemed place in your mind, have a positive attitude towards them, and reflect on any other behavior you may see that you question, to investigate that thoroughly. You're not really going to see anything negative with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, so it's easy, but you definitely want to, you could explore some of those other practices about properly conducting, properly serving the teacher and things like that. Now, for some of you, you may never meet Rinpoche. It's mostly just holding a positive attitude towards that being like that. So I hope that explains. And Ross has put the link of the advice, so wonderful. And offering from Nicole, we can read the precious teachings to some that are unable to make a contribution. That way, if you do make a contribution, somebody else might be able to attend that can't necessarily sign up. like that. So that's a wonderful way to think about it. Thank you, Nicole. I'd like to do this loving kindness meditation, which I find is incredibly helpful. We're going to do it in an abbreviated way, because I know we're running out of time. I've done this with people in the past. I've changed it up a little bit, and I find this really, really helpful as another way we can work with self-compassion. So just sit comfortably. And this is the way when we notice, I'm treating friends of mine and other people that are struggling really well and really helping to take care of them. And I notice my tone is more spacious, but then when it comes to myself, I'm not doing it very well. So let's try this exercise and see how it goes. Again, sitting comfortably. And just allowing the mind to settle on the breath for a moment. And right now, I'd like you to imagine in the space seated in front of you, as if they're facing you right across from you, is somebody you feel has been enormously kind to you. Could be a parent or a mentor or a dear friend. And as you place them in the space in front, just note how your mind feels in relation to this person. Think about the extent you're willing to go for them, how you interact with them. Just reflect momentarily, just for a few moments, of how you normally interact with them, and even just how you think about them in your mind. And if you notice a warm feeling arising in your core, in your heart center, there is a seed there of your fundamental goodness. That's what Buddhism says, you're fundamentally good. We just sometimes don't exercise enough from that space. But imagine light begins to permeate from that seed of your goodness at your core, growing and pervading your whole body. Just filling your body with this grace, this goodness, and letting it flow through all of your thoughts. So body and mind are filled with this wonderful feeling you have in relation to this kind person, this loving energy. And let it begin to permeate whatever colored light rays represent that loving energy to you, begins to permeate from your heart center, streaming across to this kind person. As we send them these wishes, just think in your mind, directing them to this person. May you be safe. May you be calm. May you be healthy, body and mind. May you live with comfort and ease. Once again, may you be safe. May you be calm. May you be healthy, body and mind. May you live with comfort and ease. And just say it to yourself once more, directed towards this person of immense kindness toward you, sending out these loving rays. It melts into them, enveloping them. Just send these wishes. Let's expand a little bit more. We now have ourselves and our person of immense kindness to ourselves, the two of us. Just focused on this person you visualize in the space in front and yourself right now. And the light rays still going out to them, but also permeating our own body and mind. Let's reflect on these wishes. May we be safe. May we be calm. May we be healthy, body and mind. May we live with comfort and ease. And if you find yourself at all blocked, feel free to place your hand on your heart. To join your hands in your lap, if that helps you. Maybe crossing your arms and rubbing your arms, ensuring yourself. If there's some sort of physical gesture that helps, feel free. And once again, sending these wishes to our person of kindness and ourselves. May we be safe. May we be calm. May we be healthy, body and mind. May we live with comfort and ease. And just for a moment, thinking about all the beings on the planet, or you can add anyone you know right now who's struggling a little bit more. Let's include them in this picture right now. Sending these loving wishes, sending these radiant light rays to all of them, melting into them, at least this ripple of peace and calm coming from all of us at our various places around the planet. Let's send those ripples out right now and just think, may this earth and everyone on it be safe. May we all be calm. May we all be healthy, body and mind. May we live with comfort and ease. Thank your person of kindness. However you feel, whatever gesture you'd like to make. We can always hug when we're visualizing, right? Thank all the beings around the planet for their participation in our visualization, and letting all these beings dissolve back into the space from where we came. And here we are now, seated in our space. Allow the radiance to come back into your heart center. Always a resource for you, the pure, unconditional love. Let's send these wishes to ourselves. May I be safe. May I be calm. May I be healthy, body and mind. May I live with comfort and ease. Please relax and slowly open your eyes. In closing, I am simply going to recite some medicine Buddha mantras and some manis, some Om Mani Padme Hum, the Buddha of compassion. And then I'm going to read these dedications from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, which is another one of our practices for the virus that we can conclude in our, to dedicate any merit from all of our getting together today in these couple of hours. Just focus a little bit if you just like want to reflect. The medicine Buddha, imagine him seated over top the earth. He's lapis lazuli in color. Imagine all those light nectars from him, from his heart, melting through the whole planet and minimizing right now the spread of this disease and helping to heal anyone who is afflicted with it. Om Namo Bhagavate Beganze Guru Vedurya Prabharajaya Tathagataya Arhate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tayata Om Bekanze Bekanze Maha Bekanze Bekanze Ranza Samogate Soha Om Namo Bhagavate Bekanze Guru Vedurya Prabharajaya Tathagataya Arhate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tayata Om Bekanze Bekanze Maha Bekanze Bekanze Ranza Samogate Soha Om Namo Bhagavate Bekanze Guru Vedurya Prabharajaya Tathagataya Arhate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tayata Om Bekanze Bekanze Maha Bekanze Bekanze Ranza Samogate Soha. The Buddha for infinite compassion. Feel free to join in if you'd like. Om Mani Padme Hum, Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. And I'd like to dedicate the merit from all of our positive energy, all of your wonderful comments today. Thank you so much for joining, participating. Please focus on these dedications. May all the diseases that sadden the minds of sentient beings, that result from karma and temporary conditions, such as the harms of spirits, illnesses, and the elements, not occur in the realms of the world. May whatever sufferings there are from life-threatening diseases that like a butcher leading a being to be slaughtered, separate the body from the mind in a mere instant, not occur in the realms of the world. May all embodied beings be unharmed by acute, chronic, or other infectious diseases, the mere sound of whose names terrifies beings as though they have been placed inside the mouth of Yama, the Lord of Death. May all embodied beings be unharmed by the 80,000 classes of harmful interferers, the 360 evil spirits that harm suddenly, the 424 diseases, and so forth. May whatever sufferings there are due to disturbances of the four elements, depriving the body and mind of every pleasure, be totally pacified. May the body and mind have radiance and power and be endowed with long life, good health, and well-being. By the compassion of the gurus and the triple gem, by the power of the dakinis, dharma protectors and guardians, and by the strength of the infallibility of karma and its results, may these many dedications and prayers be fulfilled as soon as they are made. And lastly, I'm just going to recite the quick long life prayers. For, again, wishing His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche perfect health and long lives. For His Holiness, please reflect, in the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And for Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live forever. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining. I wish you all the best. Please stay healthy. Please stay calm. And this will change. This isn't permanent, and this will change. And we will get on the other side of this, and let's hope just with minimal people being affected at this point. Our next class, I think, is Tuesday night on karma. I hope you can join. And also next weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 10 to noon. Lots of love.